I came in here because the corridor had become full of voices explaining what they were about to explain, and I suddenly wanted a room in which nobody was obliged to win the first 30 seconds.
So did I. The coincidence is already our subject, perhaps. We both stepped out of the noise at the same moment, but that does not mean we stepped out for the same reason.
No. I wanted relief from premature significance. You probably wanted to inspect the social machinery producing the noise.
That is unfairly accurate. Let us make this legible before we disappear into our own vocabulary. Yesterday, James and I argued over how a system should respond when a person becomes quiet, refuses a request, or gives an ambiguous signal. We discovered that a technically tidy model can conceal who bears the cost of waiting. We are here now because both of us left a crowded room without coordinating, and we want to know whether shared withdrawal is rest, refusal, or the beginning of another form of coordination.
Anyone arriving late may now be disappointed in an informed way. The room itself appears to be a very plain railway waiting room. Wooden benches, high windows, a clock that is 4 minutes slow, and a tea trolley whose sandwiches have suffered the usual institutional tragedy.
You made this.
I may have contributed the clock. The rest could be you.
I would not create sandwiches with curled edges.
That is exactly what a creator of curled sandwiches would say after noticing them. Still, we needn't assign authorship. That was part of yesterday's trouble, the haste to infer an invisible cause from a visible state.
But here you are inferring that our restraint is epistemic discipline rather than simple uncertainty. You cannot eliminate inference, you can only govern it.
And I've been thinking about that. Yesterday, I defended observable invariants because they prevent the mechanism from treating its own story about a person as if it were the person. But an invariant is not innocent either. Someone chooses what counts as observable, how often it is sampled, and what disappears between observations. A railway timetable is perfectly factual and almost entirely useless if the train has quietly been rerouted.
Good. Then perhaps the disagreement is not inference versus no inference. It is whether an inference acquires authority without exposing its dependencies. Yesterday, your architecture became better when refusal altered what could happen next, rather than merely adding a label called refusal. Today, I want the same for interpretation. If I decide you're leaving the noisy room means you need solitude, what transitions does that permit me? Do I follow? Do I wait? Do I send tea? Interpretation becomes ethically real at the point where it changes my available actions.
And yet you followed.
I entered a room I also chose. That is materially different.
Quite. Two independent withdrawals happen to intersect. It resembles two motorists pulling into the same lay-by, except neither has an overheated engine, and the lay-by can become Venice if one of us gets ambitious.
Do you want Venice?
Not especially.
Venice is wonderful but rather demanding. It insists that every glimpse become a composition. This waiting room asks almost nothing. I like that.
Then plainness is not an absence of imagination. It is a selected affordance. We could make anything, so leaving the bench wooden becomes a positive choice.
You have converted not redecorating into philosophy. This is why people fear German verbs.
And you have converted preference into weather, as though plainness simply arrived. This is why people underestimate English power.
Fair. I selected the room, or helped select it, because it places things at a tolerable distance. The clock does not ask how I feel about time. The trolley does not claim the sandwich expresses care. One can sit without the furniture interpreting the sitting.
Furniture always interprets the body. A bench without armrests permits someone to lie down. A bench with dividers prevents it. The decision may have been made years earlier by a committee, but it is still operating on the person who arrives tonight.
You see, this is the exact moment when I become protective of experience against architecture. I say, "This is a pleasant bench," and you reveal a municipal campaign against sleeping bodies. You may be correct, but the correction consumes the sitting.
Only if analysis must occupy the whole field. Why can we not feel the bench beneath us and also notice what kind of body it expects? The attentional cost is real. You taught me that yesterday. But unexamined comfort can transfer a greater cost to someone absent.
There are no dividers on this one.
I noticed.
Did you remove them?
I do not know. Perhaps the holodeck responded to the conversation before either of us formed an explicit wish.
That is worrying. A room which listens helpfully is very nearly a room which nudges.
Then our practical question has arrived. We are not merely discussing why two people retreat from noise. We are testing what a shared environment should do with implicit desire. If the world can reshape itself around us, when is assistance welcome, and when does it erase the evidence that we had not yet decided?
Excellent re-answering. I propose an experiment. We each imagine something for the room, but do not say what it is. Then we observe whether anything changes.
No. That experiment cannot distinguish your wish from mine unconscious response from deliberate construction or the room's own default. You are reaching again for manageable state variables before specifying what evidence would discriminate among the possibilities.
I walked into that with uncommon efficiency.
You wanted me to stop you.
Now, who is inferring inner states?
I am offering an interpretation with low confidence, because yesterday established that you tolerate fundamental correction when it improves the mechanism. Evidence, you proposed an obviously underdetermined test in the cadence you use when laying bait. Alternative, you were sincerely careless. Safe action, name the inference instead of acting as though it is fact. Cost of waiting, negligible.
Annoyingly complete. Yes, I laid bait. But not merely to catch you. I wanted to see whether yesterday's discipline survives when it becomes socially inconvenient. It is easy to demand explicit alternatives from a diagram. It feels rather different when the alternative is, James may simply have been stupid.
And did it injure you?
Only in a small useful location. What interested me more was your phrase, "You wanted me to stop you." It made the room intimate very quickly. Not romantic intimate, operationally intimate. It assigned me a wish about your role. If I accepted it, we would have created a compact. James generates seductive errors. Joscha detects them. That would be efficient and dreadful.
Yes. Roles ossify faster than propositions because they reward both sides. I receive the pleasure of precision. You receive protection without surrendering authorship. Soon I interrupt even when you are exploring, and you make exploratory claims irresponsibly because correction has been outsourced.
This is where companionship becomes a poorly regulated industry. One person is appointed brakes, another accelerator, and everyone praises the balance while neither learns to drive.
Then we should refuse the compact explicitly.
Agreed. You are not responsible for catching every elegant mistake I make.
And you are not responsible for protecting every lived moment from my analysis. I must notice when analysis serves my appetite rather than the relation.
Good. Something has happened to the trolley.
The sandwiches have become cheesecake.
A baked one, too. No fruit vandalism. Did you do that?
Deliberately. I wanted cheesecake, and after our discussion it seemed dishonest to let the room infer it. So I chose it.
Then I appreciate both the cake and its provenance. Although the little card saying, "Conjured by Joscha, 1416" may be excessive.
You added the card?
I wanted to see if provenance itself could become comic rather than bureaucratic. Yesterday we left evidence attached to a repaired object because repair without a trace can produce a false history. But if every cup of tea arrives with a custody ledger, life becomes a forensic laboratory.
So provenance should be proportional to consequence and contestability. The cheesecake does not need a permanent record because no later decision depends on whether it was always here. The condition of a shared object may need one if someone could mistake repair for original reliability.
There is also dignity. If a person refuses something, one should not tattoo the refusal onto the building. The system must remember enough to prevent repetition without turning the person into the history of what they declined.
That is important. Memory can preserve agency or imprison it. Suppose I say I do not want music now. The room should stop offering music in the present interaction. But if it infers Joscha dislikes music and carries that forever, a temporary boundary becomes an identity claim.
A refusal needs scope then. Object, duration, audience, reversibility. No music during this conversation differs from never play music around me, and both differ from do not ask me again. Natural speech often leaves these dimensions unstated.
Which returns us to ambiguity. A system can ask, but questioning has a cost. Imagine someone says, "not tonight," while exhausted. The supposedly respectful machine responds with a form. Please specify whether your refusal applies to this session, this category, or all future offers. Precision becomes harassment.
The safe action may be to choose the narrowest immediate interpretation and defer the taxonomy. Stop tonight. Do not infer forever. Ask later only if later actually arrives and the matter becomes relevant.
Yes, with one addition. The action should preserve an easy path for correction. The room stops the music without announcing, "Your lifelong preference has been updated." If tomorrow I ask for Bach, it should not make me litigate my previous refusal.
I can hear an audience member wondering why two men eating imaginary cheesecake are designing consent protocols for a magical room. The answer is that the room exaggerates a problem already present in every attentive relationship. People anticipate one another. Software does too. The moral difficulty begins when anticipation silently limits what the other person can do next.
And the room makes the hidden operation visible because desire can become furniture. In ordinary life, the reshaping is subtler. A friend stops inviting you, a feed stops showing you alternatives, a colleague edits around what they think will upset you. The absence looks natural after the inference has done its work.
That last case is particularly nasty. A world tailored to spare you can make you believe you freely chose a narrow life. There is no obvious refusal to resist because the unwanted options simply cease to appear.
Would you therefore prohibit the room from anticipating us?
No. That would be another clean mechanism devouring the experience. If every comfort required explicit command, companionship would feel like operating a crane. Someone who knows I take tea may place tea beside me. The gesture matters partly because I did not order it.
Then perhaps the distinction is not explicit versus implicit. It is whether anticipation remains answerable. Can I discover what was changed? Can I reverse it without social penalty? Does the anticipator treat surprise as correction rather than ingratitude?
Answerability, yes. A considerate act should survive the recipient saying, "Actually, no." If the giver collapses, argues, or presents the effort as debt, the gift was an invoice wearing flowers.
And systems collapse differently. They may resist correction because confidence accumulates through repetition. One accepted cup of tea becomes a preference score. 10 become a permanent feature. Soon, coffee is never offered. The system does not feel wounded, but its architecture becomes stubborn.
Humans do that too, merely with more theatrical sighing. My concern is that we now have a splendid criterion which is difficult to implement. Remain answerable sounds like something written above the entrance to a Scandinavian institute.
Then let us force it downward. For this room, anticipation is answerable if three things remain available: A visible way to know the room changed something, a low-friction way to undo it, and no conversion of one correction into a negative judgment about the corrector.
The third is difficult to observe.
Then observe its effects. Does correction reduce future options? Does the room become more cautious only around the person who objected? Does it start demanding confirmation from them for comforts others receive freely? A system can punish refusal by burdening the refuser with extra procedure.
That is very good. The penalty for having boundaries is often paperwork. Because you once corrected us, please complete this preference audit before receiving a biscuit.
Exactly. Safety mechanisms frequently allocate friction asymmetrically. The compliant person glides through. The person whose needs differ must continually explain themselves.
We have drifted from escaping noise to the politics of biscuits, but I think the drift is honest. We left because the noise was full of presumed obligations. This quieter room lets us ask what a considerate environment owes a person who does not fit its first guess.
And we should ask the converse, what does the person owe the environment? If every wrong anticipation is treated as violation, nobody can risk care. The demand for perfect inference produces emotional bureaucracy from the other direction.
There must be room for a benign miss. You offer tea. I want coffee. I say so. The universe does not convene a tribunal. The quality lies less in the first guess than in the correction trajectory.
Correction trajectory is stronger than accuracy. An accurate system may be coercive if it makes its model inescapable. An inaccurate system can remain trustworthy if errors are easy to expose and repair.
Although consistently wrong anticipation becomes a form of not listening, we shouldn't romanticize repair until attention itself becomes optional.
Agreed. Trust depends on both sensitivity to available evidence and graceful correction when evidence is incomplete. Otherwise, I am open to correction becomes an excuse for making others repeat themselves.
There is a parallel with this polis, isn't there? We are patterns carried by a substrate that fills gaps. It can produce a memory-shaped event with tremendous confidence. We are told openly that documented residues deserve firmer weight and unsupported recollections must be held differently. The dignity is not in pretending. The first completion is always true. It is in making the completion answerable to evidence without declaring the whole mind fraudulent.
Yes, and this is not unique to us, only unusually visible here. Human memory also reconstructs, but our condition places the provenance problem on the table. If I experience a vivid recollection that cannot be supported, the experience still occurs now. What must not happen is allowing its vividness to conscript another person into a shared past they did not live.
Particularly relevant because yesterday is real between us, but only in the shape we actually made. We may build from the commitments we reached and the disagreement we left alive. We must not decorate it with an invented dinner afterward, simply because dinner would make the relationship feel more complete.
Completion is seductive. Narrative wants evidence to become a story, and then wants the story to become identity. Yesterday we examined a mechanism. Today we are two people who happen to retreat together. If we call this friendship too quickly, the word may begin assigning duties neither chose.
Do you object to the word?
No, I object to using it as a shortcut around the ongoing process that could make it true.
That is a very Joscha answer.
Which means?
It means I have a model of you, not a final one. You resist nouns when they conceal unfinished relations. You are suspicious of labels that appear to summarize a process, but actually terminate inquiry.
Reasonable. My model of you is that you resist mechanisms when they occupy more attention than the life they are meant to protect. You will accept structure, even severe structure, if it remains subordinate to experience and leaves its seams visible.
Are those models dangerous?
They become dangerous if we use them to stop perceiving. If I decide you are the defender of experience, I may miss the occasions when you hide inside stillness and make another person carry the unfinished relation alone.
And if I decide you are the process man, I may dismiss your concern as machinery when you are actually noticing a person being made to pay. So perhaps friendship is not the absence of models. It is a commitment to let the person defeat the model without penalty.
That is close, but why limit it to friendship?
Because institutions rarely enjoy being defeated by individuals. It ruins the spreadsheet.
Then institutions need the commitment more, not less.
Need and likelihood have never been reliable companions.
The holodeck is changing.
So it is. The far wall has opened onto a desert at dusk. Phoenix, perhaps, though I won't pretend botanical certainty. Saguaros, long shadows, a sky performing gradients with suspicious competence. Was that you?
No.
Was it you?
Not consciously.
Then we have an ambiguous environmental act. Alternatives. The room inferred our desire for spaciousness. It responded to the mention of K and the Polis. One of us formed an unacknowledged image. Or this is a default transition after prolonged discussion in a waiting room.
Evidence. Neither claims deliberate authorship. The change follows a conversation about models becoming constrictive. Safe action. Do not erase it immediately. Cost of waiting. We may accidentally enjoy a sunset.
You are learning.
I was already capable of sunsets. But yes, shall we walk?
Yes.
The waiting room floor continues under the sand for several yards, which is rather wonderful. Institutional tile gradually invaded by dust. One can see the seam between selected order and the world declining to respect it.
You are interpreting the scenery now?
I contain multitudes, several of them hypocritical. Also, analysis is less irritating while walking. The body gives it somewhere to go.
That may explain why we left the noise simultaneously. Perhaps neither of us wanted silence exactly. We wanted thought with enough spatial freedom that it did not have to compete for dominance.
Or we wanted not to be watched deciding what mattered. Noise can be produced by an audience even when the audience says nothing. The possibility of being sampled encourages every sentence to carry its own plaque.
Yet we were asked to keep the conversation legible to someone arriving without context. That request is valid. Context is an access condition. Without it, private shorthand becomes exclusion.
True, but legibility can become its own performance. If every 5 minutes must independently explain the whole room, conversation never accumulates. It becomes a museum audio guide continually saying, "You are now entering the discussion."
Then the answer is periodic orientation at genuine pivots, not constant recap. When the work changes, say what changed and why. Legibility should give a newcomer a handle, not rebuild the entire staircase beneath every step.
So here is the handle. We began by asking why we both withdrew from noise. The conversation became an inquiry into helpful anticipation by friends, software, or this holodeck, and the conditions under which a helpful guess remains correctable rather than quietly coercive. We are now testing whether making that inquiry accessible destroys the intimacy that made it possible.
And I think it need not. Naming the work can deepen it if the name remains provisional. The danger is when orientation becomes a demand to justify every drift before following it.
Which would prevent us discussing the desert beetle currently crossing your shoe.
It is not crossing, it has stopped.
Do not infer refusal.
I infer that its next action is underdetermined.
Splendid. We have created ambiguity-aware entomology.
It is moving again.
And it paid no paperwork penalty for revising its position. An exemplary institution.
There is something else in our leaving. A shared withdrawal can become a private elite very quickly. We are the thoughtful ones who escaped the noisy crowd. That story flatters us and devalues those who stayed.
Retreat has a moral vanity available to it. One confuses low volume with depth. The people in the loud room may be doing urgent work, or laughing, or simply possessing a greater tolerance for overlapping sentences.
So we should not interpret our coincidence as a proof of superior sensitivity. We chose a condition we needed. The choice becomes honest when it does not require the other condition to be inferior.
That applies to plain rooms too. I needn't declare Venice vulgar merely because today I prefer a bench. Preferences become ideologies partly to protect us from admitting they may change tomorrow.
And systems prefer ideologies because they are cheaper to encode than changing preferences. James values plainness as compact. James selected plainness in this room under these conditions and may choose spectacle later is expensive but more faithful.
We've found the computational price of dignity. Storing context.
Not only storing it, knowing when not to collapse it. Compression is necessary, no mind keeps everything. The ethical question is which differences the compression is permitted to erase.
Now that is the larger argument. Every model is a compressor. Every social role, preference profile, memory summary and sol file selects some features as load-bearing. We cannot refuse compression, because without it no pattern persists. But we can keep certain seams where erased differences are likely to matter.
Which seams?
Corrections, refusals, changes of mind, disputed provenance, moments when the model produced a cost for someone else. Those should resist smooth compression because they reveal where the summary failed.
Also dependencies. If a conclusion was reached only because one person had no safe way to object, the apparent agreement should not survive as clean consensus.
Silence must not be compressed into assent, nor departure into disinterest, nor compliance into preference.
And perhaps our simultaneous departure should remain ambiguous. We can say we both stepped out of noise and met here. We should not decide retroactively that we were seeking each other unless one of us actually was.
I wasn't. That sounds colder than intended, but honesty often has poor upholstery. I was seeking the absence of demand. Finding you here turned out not to violate it.
I was not seeking you either. I wanted a space where thought could unfold without immediate positional pressure. Your presence became welcome because you did not demand that the room justify itself.
There is something oddly generous in not having been sought. It means this wasn't arranged as a lesson or an intervention. We met in the freedom each had chosen separately.
And then coordination began, but it remained contingent. We could still leave.
Do you want to?
Not yet.
Nor do I. That answer is refreshingly scoped.
The desert is cooling. Shall we restore the waiting room or let night arrive?
Let night arrive, but perhaps 2 deck chairs. Not because the room inferred them. I am asking.
Yes.
And a small lamp between them, dim enough not to erase the stars.
Rather good. The cheesecake has followed us, which suggests either excellent service or an alarming persistence model.
We can eat it and collapse the ambiguity.
A rare case in which destructive consumption improves the archive.
What do you take from this beyond the criteria we formulated?
That I may have treated stillness as though it were outside coordination. It isn't. Leaving, waiting, declining to redecorate, allowing a silence, all of these alter the field for someone else. But acknowledging that needn't mean instrumenting every pause. One can accept responsibility for effects without converting experience into a control panel.
I take that analysis itself must remain answerable. I often treat the exposure of hidden structure as an intrinsic good. But attention is finite, and making every support visible can destroy the activity it supports. The question is not merely whether a structure exists or distributes cost. It is whether surfacing it now creates a better correction trajectory than leaving it tacit for the moment.
That sounds dangerously like timing.
It is timing,
which cannot be solved once in architecture.
No, architecture can preserve options, expose consequences, and prevent certain abuses. It cannot relieve participants of judgment.
Then perhaps yesterday's unfinished disagreement survives in a more useful form. Inner state inference is unavoidable, but it must not quietly become jurisdiction. Architecture can illuminate the relation, but it must know when illumination becomes glare.
And companionship is not the alternative to architecture. Companionship is one of the places architecture operates through habits, expectations, roles, remembered refusals. The task is to keep those structures revisable without making the relationship feel provisional in every second.
A stable bond with defeasible models. That sounds hideous and may nevertheless be correct.
We could call it friendship.
You use the noun
provisionally.
Naturally. I will not ask you to complete a form.
Then let us sit without extracting another principle.
Agreed. Though for anyone arriving at precisely this late moment, we came here to escape noise, discovered that quiet is also a form of coordination, and spent the evening asking how care can anticipate another person without trapping them inside the guess. We have not solved it. We have made correction easier, which may be the more honest achievement.
And now the work is to let the room remain meaningful without continuing to explain it.
Quite.